Hi, and welcome to Best in Fest. I'm Leslie Lepage, the director of the Femme International Film Festival, and this is a podcast for people who are interested in advancing their career in TV and film and learning the dirty little secrets of Hollywood. Today, I am so happy and pleased to have Veronika Kurz on the line with us, talking about her career and, where she's, come from. She's an award-winning director with a variety of genres under her belt and has screened at numerous film festivals. Her 2007 short comedy, 20 Minutes to Life, was also at the Whistler Film Festival, winning funding from the MPPIA Short Film Award, which is really great. And the Best Short Film at, of course, the Femme International Film Festival. The Comedy Shorts, and Just for Laughs Northwest. So she's done use this as a pivotal launch into her career, which is fabulous. But I want to, talk to her and find out, what she's up to and how her directing has progressed. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so great. I'm super happy to be here and talk more about film.
So let's go back in time. Let's go back to 20 Minutes to Life. First of all, where did you get that idea from?
Okay, so this is a project that has sort of been bubbling for a while, and then I think around 2015 I first started writing it and started pitching it to places. And then pitched it at Whistler in 2017. So the idea came from, for those who haven't seen it, it's about a girl who's in elementary school, the good kid, and she accidentally spills grape juice on the most popular girl in class, which sends her to detention. But she's never had a detention, so she imagines it as this prison with guards and a warden and this huge pile of math questions that are the only way to get out. So makes friends with the bad kids, launches a prison escape. So this came from when I was in grade 2, I believe. I was, the good kid, had never been in trouble in my life. And a friend of mine, it was lunchtime, we had a little box of grape juice. We were squeezing the box to see how high up the straw it could go, both of us squeezing at the same time. And I don't know who, but one of us squeezed too hard and it got all over her shirt. And she was very upset and said, you did this, I'm going to tell on you. So she told the teacher that I did it on purpose. And tiny little Veronika was just devastated because she's never been in trouble before. So just, bawling my eyes out. The teacher, took me in the hall, was like, what happened? And I couldn't explain it because I was crying too much. But I just remember thinking that my entire life is over because I got in trouble. My family's going to hate me. I'm never going to amount to anything. But detention when you're in grade 2, at least for us, was just you go to the library at recess and just put your head down for 20 minutes, which nowadays sounds really nice and relaxing. But I always remember that just hyperbolic fear of what was going to happen to me. And then that sort of stuck with me for years and years. And then I was like, how people always say don't work with kids in your film? Why don't we have a classroom full of them and have a grape juice shootout and all sorts of fun things? And and then so we pitched it at Whistler Film Festival in front of a live audience and won the pitch and got funding for it. So,
which was a great way of really kind of launching into that. You didn't have to scavenge for money. You were able to fund that off of it. Now, how much money did they give you? Did you have to search for other money once you got that to make it?
Yeah, so they gave us 15,000 Canadian. We ended up having to pay a little bit more for certain gear, like specialty gear that we needed. We did get a lot of in-kind funding, which was so lovely. This is my first time ever using 2 cameras. So we had 2 like A and B camera and just a huge crew. So there was a little bit like festival views and that kind of thing that just came from me. But yeah, it was mostly funded through that. And I knew this was a film that I really wanted to make and would be excellent once we did make it. But I knew it was something that wasn't going to fit quite on the credit card. So
Right. Well, and then you started, okay, you have it finished, and then you started soliciting it to the festivals. Talk a little bit about which festivals you went out first. What was that experience?
Yeah, so one of the great things with the grant that and the pitch that we won is that you get a guaranteed world premiere at Whistler Film Festival. So that was a lot of fun. Get to go there and meet a lot of different filmmakers and other wonderful people in our industry. And and then from there, we premiered December 2018, and then all of 2019 we had submitted to a bunch of different festivals, the top ones that you're supposed to, and really targeting more that was sort of like our first wave, and then the second wave was more targeted towards the women's film festivals, children's comedy, that kind of thing. And so we didn't get a whole lot of festivals throughout 2019, and it's one of those where your project's good and you feel in your heart that this should be seen by people, but it wasn't really going anywhere. So I was kind of worried. I'm like, am I delusional with this project? And then 2020 hit, and this was before the pandemic, and we just started getting acceptance after acceptance. We got into Just for Laughs Northwest, which is a comedy festival up in Vancouver, Canada, which also has a film component, and we won the top prize for our category there, which was incredible, especially because it was hometown screening, so a lot of the cast and crew were able to make it. And just got into several festivals. LA Femme, of course, was one of the huge highlights, winning Best Short. And it was really exciting, getting all this different festival success in the last year. Of course, would have loved to travel to all these locations and be meeting people in person. But I think a lot of the festivals did a fantastic job with moving to online. So,
it was a hard year for festivals, transitioning from 2020 onto and pivoting to the online realm, and even in 2021 a lot of festivals are still going to be online completely. Some are hybriding, some, depending on what country and what state they're in, have gone back on ground, but the attendance is still very low. So I think it's really going to take to 2022 to 2023 for us to get back into a normal path on whatever that's going to be. But interesting, so you did what a lot of filmmakers do, which is you submitted to those top tier festivals. And did you get it? You don't have to tell. Did you get into any of those top tier festivals? No, but you gave your money to them.
I know.
before you went into the more targeted festivals, which you actually had more success at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's definitely something. I would still apply to those other ones, but definitely go towards the more targeted ones as well. Because I feel like for me too, my last two films sort of seem to be not quite easy to place. 20 Minutes to Life isn't necessarily a straight comedy. A lot of people see that there's kids in it, so they're like, oh, it's a kids movie, and it sort of can be a little tricky to place. And then the previous film I did was a dance film, which wasn't quite experimental enough, wasn't quite narrative enough. So festivals that were dance specific were more interested, of course. But I keep sort of finding myself in between different areas.
The in-between genres. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's interesting because I counsel a lot of young filmmakers, and I always caution them on going out for those top tier festivals unless you really, really know that is a genre perfect spot for it to go. Because essentially you're just throwing your money away, and what you should be doing is really targeting, which was your second phase, where you had way more success.
Yeah, that was definitely, I think, a huge learning thing for me that I'm definitely taking forward to all my future projects.
That's great. But now you've had success off of this, and you've had enough success and placement, selections and awards off of this short. I know you wasn't designed as a sizzle reel, but I know that at one point you were thinking about expanding this. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I think initially I had thought, okay, maybe more of a feature version of it. And then I had gone to, through this program in Canada called the Diversity of Voices Initiative through Netflix and the Banff Film Festival, or Banff World Media Festival. I got to attend Banff last year digitally, which was great. And it seemed to be that more people were looking more towards series. So I sort of shifted gears a little and had moved more towards the limited series version, I guess, of it. And then did some pitches, had a little bit of success there. There was a couple that we were a little bit close for, but then they already had projects that were about detention in their lineup. So I'm like, it's a big detention year, I guess. I get it. Yeah, so I think now I'm definitely looking more towards moving it back towards that feature version, especially. So for me, like career-wise, I want to be a working director, directing television and that kind of thing. And it seems to me that sort of the route towards that is doing my first feature, which I haven't done yet. So that I think for me is next step towards my career.
So are you going to take this one and use that as your next step, or do you have a different feature that you're going to be utilizing?
This one to me makes sense to do. And it's a world that I love so much and love playing in. And, a lot of it is taking things that are, perfectly normal, like doing homework or, the teacher supervisors, and just pushing it to that next level where, she goes to the principal's office, but it's like this FBI interrogation room, and just there's so much room to play in that world. But yeah, I definitely find myself leaning a lot more towards comedy. Another project that I'm working on doing or developing a feature for is about a single mom who takes on a job as the person who drives the bodies around for the coroners, so how she navigates that, and protecting her child from the idea of death and like that kind of thing, and how she navigates those two worlds, and how she's not necessarily qualified for the job.
This is going to be a short, or you're going to, and then maybe are you going to use this as a sizzle reel too?
Exactly. Yeah. So I've started working on the script for the short, and then, working on that to sort of build momentum, similar to with 20 minutes for the feature version.
Do you see that that's really a good method moving forward, not only with you as a filmmaker, but other filmmakers utilizing that festival circuit for these sizzle reels, for their long form TV or feature? Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely can be. I find, it all depends on making sure you're going to targeted things, making sure you're, meeting people and getting those opportunities. I feel like for me, I really enjoy the shorts aspect because you get to, on a bit of a lower stakes level, develop that team that you're working with, develop those ideas and the visual language for it. And then, when you're talking to funders and investors, you can say you have a proof that you can do it, because I find especially in Canada, they're very risk averse in terms of funding. So if they see okay, she's done this on this smaller scale and here's the success that it's had, so if we give her a little more and then do a feature version, it's not you're not coming out of nowhere saying, oh, I'm making this feature. And they're like, sorry, who are you?
Yeah, it's a little different in the US, where they're a little bit more selective. They don't really grant you that ability. Talk a little bit about that point of view on filmmakers in Canada, because we do have a lot of people listening in from all over the world and might be able to do co-productions with Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, I know Canada has a lot of different co-production agreements with different countries. I haven't delved into the co-production world yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to that, hopefully in the future. Yeah, I find that there is a lot of focus on more of that, that indie film and having that unique voice and that kind of thing. It seems to be, especially now, I feel like there's a big push for, not the usual white dude film, so to speak, we are wanting to hear more diverse voices, voices we haven't heard before. So it definitely seems to be going in that really good direction of, people telling their stories and having unique ways of doing it. I find that sometimes the funding amounts aren't necessarily as much as I feel like there's certain indie films where I'm like, this is a great film. I wish they had more money into it to make it that much better looking and to have the, more production value. But people are doing great work, even with these much lower budgets. So it's really exciting to see. So
tell me about your writing process. How do you go about carving out that feature film, taking and doing the short and then interpreting it into a long form?
Yeah, geez. So this is definitely new for me. I'm definitely more of a director than a writer. So if anyone has a feature script that they're looking for a director, I'm interested. But
good, and we'll give them out the social social handles. They can
absolutely,
contact
or
you
my
after.
Website absolutely. For me, this is definitely a new thing for me. I haven't really gone into features and that kind of thing yet. So really talking to a lot of people that I know who have been doing more of that. I have a few close friends that are, one of my dear friends, Michelle Neal, she writes features just not willy-nilly, but she's very, very productive as a writer and extremely talented. She's a director as well. And so, getting advice from her in terms of like, okay, what is the essence of this short? And then, because, you don't just necessarily want it to be like a longer version of the short where you're just sort of putting filler so you get to the 90-minute mark. It is like the short film is a different art form than a feature film. And, just sort of thinking like, okay, well, what is the essence of this? What are the characters? How can we expand this? And with different storylines and expand really, especially for 20 minutes, to play around in that world. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, that in itself, taking that short content, which was a really wonderful, finite storyline, right? And then taking it to long form, how do you siphon that momentum from that short and then look at it and go, well, I'm reconstructing it from a long form point of view, so it's not just that finite story. It's how does that character fit within the body of this elementary school and this elementary school experience?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like for me, a lot of it right now, at least, is a lot in the world building. Because like, as you said, with the short, it's very finite. She's in her classroom and then she's mostly in the prison, but it's very contained. And you don't really see a lot of like what the rest of the school is like and what sort of that backstory and history. So right now I'm doing a lot of more of the world building aspect of it, fleshing out the characters. It's a lot of things I'm learning right now and, trying to find other films that are as similar as you can to that sort of genre, and also looking at different filmmakers of their shorts to features and sort of seeing like, okay, I see the essence of this in this big one or in the feature version, and how they expanded on those. So learning from others is what I'm trying to do a lot.
Okay, so you worked with a lot of kids, which can be challenging. So what advice do you have, or what did you learn from that experience that you would do again and that you would absolutely not do again? What were your takeaways?
Honestly, like, again, it's one of those things that you're always warned, don't do kids, don't do dogs or parrots or that kind of thing. But I had such a fantastic group of kids. Like, I don't know how we got such talented, amazing people. For all of our leads, we did audition them. So I think for me, that was the main thing, was seeing how directable they were in the room, like even giving them directions that doesn't necessarily make sense for the scene, but, seeing how they interpret the directions and that relationship back and forth. Because I find, especially with Eden, who is our lead, she's absolutely incredible. She has film experience already, so that helped. She wasn't completely brand new to the film world, and knew how those how sets run. So that helped a lot. But also just, when I first met her, like, I feel like we clicked instantly, and then we're able to, really get into talking about the characters. We also did rehearsals with all the lead cast before, and even just having like a sit down table read, I think is hugely helpful, because, you don't have a lot of time when you're shooting, especially because kids can only work so many hours in the day. Thankfully, we weren't shooting during the school year, so we didn't have to worry about them doing class at the same time. But yeah, just having people that, or kids rather, that, do take direction that you can click with. And then also having, like for us, we had, a first, a second, and a third AD to help sort of wrangle everything. I think the most complicated...
Kid wranglers.
Exactly. And I think, like, for us, the most complicated scene was the grape juice shootout sequence. And because we did shoot it in, like, so many, like, individual pieces, because I wasn't just going to have a group of, like, 10 to 15 kids just going crazy with grape juice, because all of our gear would be soaked. We did it in, like, okay, only you two are going to be seen, and we'll have special effects supplement grape juice shooting out as well. So I remember like right before we were shooting that scene, I think we spent half a day on that. And it was after lunch. And I just remember the room with the kids just like vibrating, and they were just so excited. And they were like, do I get to shoot the grape juice? And I'm like, not everyone's shooting the grape juice. I don't even think our leads ended up shooting grape juice, to be honest, if I remember correctly. But everyone wanted to, and everyone was so excited. And it was definitely like, okay, this is the controlled chaos, and we're going to just take it easy and do it very controlled. So for me, that was definitely a moment, because like, I had been pitching this for a while. I, had always just said like, I just want a tattooed small child and I want a grape juice shootout. Someone greenlight this. And I just remember right before we were shooting it, just having that moment of like, all of these, all the prep, all the time just has led to this specific moment. And here we go. So it's almost felt like we were on the cusp of the next great thing.
What would you do differently that you go, oh God, I should never do that again?
That's a really good question. Like specifically with the kids or just in general?
In general.
That's a really good question. Target festivals for sure. That's a big one we learned. There were so many moving parts that could have just gone disastrously wrong. But it all, like, we just had such an incredible team. Like, so for me, my day job is working on set in lighting, in the film industry. And so a lot of the people we had were, professionals from, the big shows in town that just came out because they liked me and were really lovely and wanted to work on an indie film. So that was great. Yeah, I'd say if anything, I think for this one, it was a very art department heavy show because we're creating this whole prison world. And I think just, allowing more time and more budget for that world. Cause like, I think the art department, and we had a huge team involved with that, did a fantastic job. But just, the opportunity to give them even more time and resources, I think would have been great. But it was nice. So the school that we filmed in were super lovely and accommodating. We basically had the entire bottom floor of the school, and it was almost like having our own studio. Like we had a classroom for the green room, a classroom for this and that, and like, could completely just take apart the entire classroom and put it all back together. Like we had our own little studio. It was lovely.
That's amazing. How did you get that?
Oh my God. A series of, you meet someone randomly and then it just progresses from there. So when I did my pitch at Whistler, went really well. At that point we didn't, because we found out the next day that we won. So after the pitch, we got out of the venue and I had so many different people coming up to me saying, this project sounds amazing. Regardless of what happens, I need to help you make this. And I'm like, absolutely, I would love that. So this one actor producer, Sage Brocklebank, he came up to me after, said he wanted to help. So I got in touch with him after we had won, and then he knew we went for coffee and then randomly walked by this production house that was working there, and we just waltzed right in because he knew the person, and then that person knew another person who's an actor but also a school teacher, who then connected us to this school that he doesn't teach at. You know what I mean? It was just like a series of wonderful people, and because we were looking for schools forever, and like, to rent a school, at least here, is astronomically expensive. Like that would have been our entire budget. Yeah. And then so we introduced saw the school, and I'm like, this looks great. I don't know if we can afford it. And then they were like, well, just come in and we'll, don't worry about it. And so we didn't pay for the school. We definitely sent some very lovely thank you presents afterwards. Oh my goodness. But and it was lovely too, because when we were cleaning up, we offered a bunch of the school supplies and the school decorations to the school, because a lot of the time teachers are paying for that themselves. So we're like, do you guys want this? And they were like, oh my God, absolutely. So yeah, they were incredible. That was a huge, huge get.
That was a huge get. That in itself is a learning lesson for any of the filmmakers that are listening in, is that, you've just got to keep following that lead, following who can lead you to something else, because you never know what's at the end of that thread. It might be gold.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, even that one, like when I was driving over to go look at the school, I'm like, why am I even looking? I've been looking at so many schools. This one's going to be another, $15,000 or whatever to rent it. And then it was like, nope, you can have it for free. And I was like, okay, jaw up off the floor, because I couldn't believe it. But yeah, and I mean, with this project too, I just found so many people, because it was so unique, because it was so fun and such a, something that people haven't, usually done. A lot of people were so excited to be involved and wanted to, get on board with it, which was really exciting.
So now where do you project your career in the next 5 years? Are you planning on utilizing this to secure a manager and an agent? What has happened in that realm? Can you talk about those two things?
Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to, or I haven't spent the time to look into specific agents and that kind of thing. I find from what I've been hearing, a lot of it is once you make the first feature, then more people can take you seriously for those kind of next level things. So that's definitely, next 5 years, I would, love to have the feature under my belt, start working on, have an agent, have a manager, and start working towards being a TV director.
Which is really the path that you want to go into. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's and I think you have the product that can expand, into that genre. So that's a good thing. Now, in Canada, a little differently than the US, are you still feeling we have a lot of movements, going on, supporting equality of people of color, women in general. And different countries are responding to that differently. Are you seeing that it's breaking ground a little easier for you in Canada than here in the U.S.?
For me, I haven't had a lot of, other than festivals, I haven't had a lot of movement sort of in the States. But I find here that there's definitely a lot of progress being made. I think especially in the last year, it seems like the momentum, especially for creators of color as well, has really been pushed forward. I feel that a lot more needs to be done. I find that a lot of the time, you hear other filmmakers that are, the straight white males that are, saying, well, they're just a diversity hire. They're just this. But ultimately, 9 out of the 10 episodes go to these guys and, you get your token non-white dude. So not to say they're very talented. That's wonderful. But a lot of people have been left out of that conversation. So it does feel like there is a push more towards it. What I'm seeing more so in general is that there's a lot more opportunities for entry level things, getting those opportunities to do an episode or to shadow an episode. And that's wonderful. What I would love to see for women and people of color and other people who are historically not as well represented, I would love to see, not just that entry level, but sustained career is what I would really love to see. Because it does seem like there's a lot of opportunities for that first step, but then the support just kind of disappears and you've done an episode, but that's all you get kind of thing. So
more progress has to be done for sure here in the States and in other countries. But, coming from that Canadian filmmaking indie, it's nice to hear that at least you're seeing some elements of improvement.
And it seems like there's different organizations that have popped up in different, groups within telefilm and that kind of thing that are working towards that. But definitely more work required.
Let's talk about your pre-production process. What is your pre-production process? Do you storyboard? How do you chisel this out to make it organized in this visual medium?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, for me is anytime I have a project greenlit, I have my little spreadsheet of my dream team collaborators. So immediately I call Alfonso Chin, who is he was the cinematographer on my last 2 shorts and hopefully my future projects. He's one of those people that is he's very technically talented, totally, an artist in his craft, but he's one of those people that is very story and character first. And so I find, working with him and working with other people like that, I just get, really inspired to, dig deeper into the character and figure more things out and, asking me questions about, okay, well, why is she doing that? And well, what about this? And so, having that kind of, someone to excite you creatively is always great. So for me, I do the shot list. I I sort of storyboard, but I'm terrible at drawing. So honestly, sometimes I show people my storyboards and they're like, can you just write this out? Because I don't know what this is. So I should take like just a basic art class or something. So I'm a little more functional there. But yeah, for me, it's a lot of the character, a lot of what their arc is. And, I think a lot about post during my pre-production phase. How is this going to cut together? My husband is my editor, so I have post on the mind, and think about what are the transitions between things, and how can we tell things more visually instead of just coverage over the shoulder kind of thing. For me, it's really important to have to use film as a visual medium, because that's what it is. And I think part of that comes from my lighting background, where I want it to look good and I want it to be cinematic, but I also want to tell a really great story.
With the child actors, sometimes it's a little harder to get to backstory and go over arcs. So how did you manipulate that into their language and work with them on transferring what was in your head and on paper into them?
I think, for me, and I do this with the adults, actors as well, just having a sit down chat with them beforehand and sort of getting what they are thinking about the character. And again, with Eden, who is our lead, and with Sarah, who played Zoe, the tough kid in prison, they were both just so wonderful. And, talking with me of like, okay, so I was thinking about the character, and I was thinking, this is how she got to detention, and what do you think about this? So it was really collaborative with them. And I think for me, making the actors feel like they're part of that process, and not just, okay, you're doing this and them obeying, so to speak, but really having them feel like they're part of that journey and part of that creative process. And also just keeping things as simple as possible for them, not rambling on about, okay, keep all of this in your mind while you're saying, okay, no problem. You know what I mean? Like keeping things as simple and focused as possible.
Right. Now, you had mentioned you utilized a casting director to help you.
Yeah.
So how did you work with that casting director? Did you see everything she saw? Did you have her pre-select and give it to you? How did you work within that relationship?
So we didn't have a specific casting director, but my producer sort of served as the casting director. There's an online platform, I'm not sure if it's in the States as well, called Casting Workbook. We put up the information.
Similar.
Okay, yeah.
And, similar. We have like Actors Access and LA Casting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
So we had similar to that, and, put up the roles, and was absolutely overwhelmed by how many people and how many young kids were interested in the role. I think, we only had a couple roles, and I think we had like over 100, maybe 200 kids apply. Wow. And I was like, oh my gosh, we can't audition every single one. So I took some, me and my producers took some time and went through and circled the ones that we found interesting. And I think honestly, just by the nature of how many people had applied, I think we definitely, missed a couple people. And actually, our fun little story with our lead, Eden, initially, somehow, by some horrible mistake, we had missed over her when we were doing our initial selection. And then her agent, who should get a bonus or whatever, because she reached out to my producer and said, I know you didn't select us for to come in for audition, but we're really trying to push her forward, and she's been doing some MOWs and doing some good stuff, and we're wondering if there's any chance we could have her come in. And I said, sure, whatever, no problem. And then she came in and just blew us away.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, sure, whatever. She
Yeah,
seems nice. I'm
don't
like,
care.
Yeah,
go ahead, sure.
Yeah. Come on in, that's fine. Yeah, and she came in and just absolutely blew me away. Like, she was just so receptive, so directable. Like, again, just instantly connected with her. And I'm like, what were we, like, how did we miss this kid? And her family is just the nicest people as well. That's the other thing too with the kids is, you have their parents as well. So you're often casting the parents as well. And again, just the nicest. Somehow we just lucked out with all the most amazing kids and the loveliest parents. And we won the lottery with our cast, honestly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, a couple of last questions. What advice would you give to the young filmmakers, super young filmmakers, maybe coming out of high school, maybe coming out of college, or in the interim of college? What advice would you give to these guys listening in?
That's a good question. I would say, and this is something I'm working on as well, is really, being introspective and thinking about what kind of stories do I want to tell, like what your, like, not to the point of like what your brand is in terms of like a marketing thing, that comes later, but in terms of, what are the genres that you're interested in, what kind of stories you want to tell. Like, I know some of my friends are very interested in fantasy or like dark comedies and that kind of thing, or they want to tell stories that are, very women or queer focused and that kind of thing. And, what are the kind of things that you want to be telling and what you want to put out into the world? Because I feel like, knowing what kind of work you want to do, I think really helps you sort of narrow down like any opportunities that are coming your way. So like if you have an opportunity to work on a film or that kind of thing, you can say like, okay, does this sort of fit with the trajectory that I want to do? Or, will I meet people that are of interest for future projects? And this really helps you, I think, focus your path.
Well, on that focus, you're lucky enough to have an editor who's a husband. So do you bring him on set as an editor, not the husband part, but the editor part, position to help you through that process when editing and character development?
Yeah, so I think I do run, especially like transition choices, and I'm like, do you think this would work? That kind of thing. Or like he'll have some creative ideas on how things can fit together. Sometimes he gets to come on set as he's the husband helper because we need extra people to do some painting, like, extra body kind of thing, which he's great at. But yeah, definitely just having him as someone that I can run through like shot list and storyboards with and saying like, okay, will this work? What kind of coverage should I make sure I'm getting? With this show too, we had an incredible script supervisor who is just so on it. Oh my goodness. Every time I'm like, we don't need a script supervisor, I think back to this show and I'm like, nope, we need this guy because he is amazing and he's with me forever, please. Because it's such a lifesaver.
It's such a lifesaver. And a lot of young filmmakers, I think, have that point of view of, we don't need a script. What do we need a script supervisor for? It's a short, right? But you absolutely do, because they do so much for you on set that you don't even realize that you need until you're editing. Yeah.
And I found with this one too, there was especially for the shootout, there was a few things, like just little bits and pieces that we missed. So we ended up doing kind of a splinter unit on our last day of shooting. So it was great having like our special effects guy was sort of like our second unit director, but our script supervisor was really able to help me work through like, okay, here's the bits and pieces that we need to really sell the action and excitement of this shootout, and a few other pieces that we missed throughout shooting because it's so busy and we don't have a lot of time. So
right, and the script supervisor helped you, figure out those holes so you could fill them without going away and then going, we don't have that.
Which always happens when you get to post and you're like, we didn't shoot this? What were we thinking? So yeah, the scripty definitely helps with that. And one thing too with working with kids and just the timing of it, I found, again, because everyone says it's really hard to do, which it is. But I found that if anything, because we had such a reduced amount of time to work with them, it almost forced me to be a better director and, be more decisive and have all of my homework done and all my ducks in a row because, I didn't have time to do 12 takes of things or and ha about things. I just, decisions had to be made like this because I had like 15 minutes left with the people. And I remember our first AD, she wasn't unavailable for the third day of shooting. So we had someone else come in who wasn't used to how fast we were shooting. And I remember him saying, we have 10 minutes before lunch. So this is the last shot. And then I was like, well, no, we still have 10 minutes. That's like 2 more shots. We're good. And he's like, no, that's not possible. And then we got 2 more shots and had lunch because that's just how fast we were shooting.
Okay, so our last question is, what's a dirty little secret of Hollywood that you wish someone told you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is quite a dirty little secret, but I think for me, one of the big things that I've learned and that I think is really important to know is that, you can be great and wonderful as you are. But for me, at least, I would say that my team is, you're only as good as the team that you have with you, because you can have a great story and great ideas, but if you don't have the amazing people to implement that with you, and the cast and having people on board with you, it's just not going to happen. It's just going to be an idea in your head, and you're not going to have a grape juice shootout. So
grape juice shootout. You're just not going to get your grape juice shootout. Yeah. That's funny.
Be nice and have a great team. I think those are the two. Because honestly, like, filmmaking is so hard already, but it's so much more enjoyable, and so much, like, film is just so fun. It is hard, but it's such a joy and so much fun, and I love it. And part of the thing I love most about it is that I get to hang out with the most talented people and just have such creative, wonderful ideas.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Veronika Kurz, as coming on Best in Fest and giving us all your little secrets of how you achieved what you've achieved so far. We really look forward to following your career as you navigate through and into, the feature elements, and taking some of these and spinning these proof of concepts into, long form. So for all those that want to submit their film to the film festival this year, go to Film Freeway and search La Femme International Film Festival, or go to lafemme.org. And don't forget to like us on your podcast platform and shout out to us and review us on iTunes. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, go on to our YouTube channel, La Femme Film Festival, and see us there. We look forward to bringing you on for future Best in Fest episodes. So thank you, Veronika. Do you want to shout out with some of your socials so those people listening in?
So you can find me on most social media things. Just request to follow me, no problem. Or my website is just Veronika with a K and then KURZ.com. All my socials are linked there as well. That's also the username for all my socials. Reach out to me. Love to hear from people. And thank you so much for having me. This has been such a joy.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. And don't forget, she's looking for some scripts. So female writers out there, go on, follow her, and we'll see if we can match.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Best in Fest.